After reading the second book, I have already lost track of the vast majority of them. Hello, welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. This is Chris. This is the book I've read, For We Are Many by Dennis E. Taylor. This is the second book in the Bobiverse, and we'll discussing For We Are Many. I will be drinking a third degree. For We Are Many is the second book in the Bobiverse. The first book, We Are Legion, We Are Bob, tells the story of how Robert something or other, got hit by a bus. His brain was frozen and then uploaded to a computer and sent on a ship into outer space, a space probe, where he made a bunch of copies of himself in an attempt to save the human race, which had nearly self-exterminated. So if you haven't seen the first video, go see the first video. In the first video, I did my best to try to tell you who the different Bobs are. And I gave you all their names. And at this point, after reading the second book, I have already lost track of the vast majority of them. Some of them basically only narrate a chapter or two. Some of them come and then are destroyed. It's very confusing. So what happens in For We Are Many? Several things. First, humans. So we end off book one with the humans reaching their first colony on Vulcan. And it continues. Humans colonize a couple other planets. They colonize Poseidon, which is a planet that's completely covered in water. There's some issues with Kraken because it's a huge water planet. So there's huge water creatures that are terrifying. But they make cities that float on the water and plan on making cities that float in the air. And they find several other habitable planets that will work for humans. On Vulcan, everything seems to be going pretty smoothly. There are some issues from some animals that want to eat humans. Those get dealt with. There are some animals that implant bugs, their eggs inside of people. Those get dealt with. And there's an issue with a disease that can kill people. But that hasn't been dealt with yet. Population seems to be booming across Vulcan. One of the androids, or one of the Bobs, Howard, is in control of Vulcan. And as doing so, he becomes close with them and he falls in love. He realizes that it's not going to work out because he is Bob, a program in a space station. And even though he has VR and can communicate with them, it's not the same. So he goes and he leaves with someone else taking over. She falls in love, gets married with another human, has a family, but then her husband dies. So Howard is able to return as a Manny, which is an android, basically. And because of their faster-than-light communication, called the Scut, he is able to, from light years away, control this Manny, this android, and is able to show up to the funeral. Later in the book, after some of the other Bobs get a hand on the android project, they are able to make it a lot more realistic. So he's able to... This new android looks like a human. Looks like how Bob did when Bob was... before Bob got upgraded and became a replicant. On Earth, however, there's Vehement, which is... they love their acronyms. Vehement is an anti-human terrorist group that goes and tries to cause issues and kill people. They think humans are basically a cancer on the universe and try to kill all human beings. And so they've done several terrorist attacks, and they are able to take over Homer, who is one of the Bobs, and control him. They figure out what happens, how Vehement was able to do it. They stop it. They free Homer. Homer is freed from their control, but later destroys all his backups and explodes himself. Basically because he can't deal with all of the things that Vehement made him do while he was under their control. Bob is working with the Deltans, which we saw in the first book, and is able to turn them from a species that was going extinct. Was able to turn that around, attack the gorillas who wanted to eat all the Deltans. And then there were some hippogriffs, which are some big flying things that were able to have camouflage the way like a squid or something does. And so they were impossible to see as they came down and were attacking Deltans from the air. So he was able to save them from both of those However, the Deltans thought, we don't like this Bob who's able to do all this stuff, having power over us. So they basically banished him as a sky god. But he watched and was able to save them. And now he just watches along and has a friend, Archimedes, who he's able to talk to. There is Medeiros, who they met in the first book, ended with an attack on Medeiros controlling a system. They returned to this system to go after Medeiros again, this time with a bigger group. They're able to take over the system from Medeiros. However, they realize after comparing the different images that they've had of Medeiros over their 3 different contacts that they've had with him, that all of them are slightly different in a way that makes them think that these are not upgrades that Medeiros put on himself, but these are different upgrades that different Medeiroses added over time, which means out there somewhere there's a group, just as Bob is going and making a Bobiverse, there's this Medeiros Bobiverse. Medeiros was Brazilian, military guy, very militaristic, unwilling to work for peace. Finally, the last thing that happens is the others. So book 1 ended with one of the Bobs finding a planet where this other alien group, who is basically just stealing it for its raw minerals, killing its life, and using them for food. That's how book 1 ended. Book 2, they go when they are able to make contact. They're able to communicate with this hive because the Chinese probe had gone out and was captured by the others. And this hive basically says, yeah, we will take whatever we want. Everything is here for us to gain food to make the hive better. And they realize they're not going to be able to do a whole lot with it. And so Bob is trying to stop them because they see that the others are on a quest as they're working their way out, are working their way towards a system where the Bobs have found intelligent life. The Bobs go and do an attack to try to push off the others, but the others are too big. Bob is too small. Bob does not have enough resources to deal with these others. There are several spaceships that are basically just cargo holds, and they are 1 kilometer in diameter and 10 kilometers wide, and they have many, many of these. They are working at a scale too great for Bob to be able to do it. So then the others came to this planet that the Pavs live on. The Pavs are an intelligent species that are somewhere in the Victorian stage. They have steam engines and that sort of stuff. Haven't worked their way much past that. And they have a population estimated around 1 billion. Bobs come and at night capture and kidnap 20,000 Pavs. And right after they do that, the others come and kill everyone, all other life on the planet. Not just the intelligent beings, but all the unintelligent beings, all the plants, everything in the oceans, and then just raid everything for all the minerals they can grab. So the book ends with Medeiros somewhere out there that they are unsure of. The others, a way bigger problem than they can handle. They have 20,000 of these creatures in their colony ships. They are in cryo chambers, and a lot of the problems that were opened up in the first book are dealt with, but a lot of the small problems are dealt with, and now everything's at a different, bigger scale. That's how book 2 ends. The Bobs are different in this book. You start to see a differentiation between Bobs. So in the original book, you see there are some differentiations between the personalities of the Bobs. Now you start to see, he just hints at it. You don't see a whole lot of it. The original Bobs were very interested in taking VR, making it better. They kept trying to work on a beer, and once they got the beer right, they're like, okay, now we're going to go and do coffee. Now we're going to do Coca-Cola. Now we're going to take the beer that we had, now we're going to try to do a Guinness. Now we're going to figure out all these different ways to make this VR more livable. And these other ones are just like, no, we have a VR because this is the way that we can communicate with other Bobs and exist. But they are more happy being programs controlling the things that they control. Basic. We also see Howard falling in love, running away, and then returning once his love is becomes a widow. We don't know where that's going to end up. I'm assuming nowhere good. Generally, humans falling in love with androids is not great. And it's either not going to be good because they're going to try to do something which is not super great, and it's going to be questioned whether or not Bob can stay in relations with humans if Bob is going to be falling in love and trying to do things with his android, with the humans, physical things, or Howard, this one who has fallen in love, is going to become insane. He's going to try to live as an android, and then once she dies, he's going to be unable to cope. Or maybe he's going to get himself uploaded to the android to only live as an android, and then will be unable to cope as he's just in an android body forever. Maybe he's going to try to make himself mortal. Maybe that's where it's like, okay, we've gone and we lived the life, and now what? So some of them try to become more human, like Howard, in a way that's scary. Other Bobs are becoming more okay being in VR, being programs. And the Bobs that deal with the others, I have no doubt that Dennis knew what he was doing here. This is how the book ends. They state they need to eliminate the others. The root problem, though, is still to produce enough ordnance to make a dent in the others' armada. The size problem is still overwhelming. This is all just a delaying action, Andrew shook his head morosely. As long as the others are always making the first move, we can never defeat them. All they have to do is huddle for a decade or two, rebuild, and we're back to square one. We have to take the fight to them. This is true, and you know damn well it's the subject of many a moot. A moot is a meeting. I glared at Andrew. I have an idea that I'm working on that might form a final solution. But I'm not sure yet if it's even feasible. And even if it turns out to be workable, it's a long game. Meanwhile, we're also trying to gear up to an invasion fleet. Maybe we can drop in on the others and pay our respects. Andrew's only answer was a predatory smile. So there are some Bobs that are working towards fighting the others. And this idea of the final solution obviously is pointing back to things that are scary, especially after they talk about how they need to eliminate the others. And it does make sense. They need to deal militarily with the others, and these others is a hive alien group, a species of alien that works in hives, in a hive, in order to take over the universe, system by system, pull everything of value that's out of it, killing anything that's in its way. That is a dangerous problem. A lot of the philosophical problems that we met in the first book aren't really touched with here. Obviously, the first book is setting up this world, and now we're in this world and we're continuing on. A lot of things are going on, trying to keep track of them all. It's going to get crazy. And I wonder how Dennis is going to do it. I believe there's 3 more books in this series, and so it's just working our way through. I already have the 3rd book. It arrived just last week. All These Worlds. There are 5 books in this series. We Are Legion, For We Are Many, All These Worlds, and then there's Heaven's River and Not Two Are Lost. Which are not out in this printing yet. So I have to read these slowly, because if I read book 2 and then book 3, and then I have to wait several months for book 4. So I'm just slowly working my way through it. However, I am excited for book 3. This is a good series. It's a fun series. We're in the world now. Things are working their way up. I'm sure there's a lot more chaos and shenanigans that are going to happen. More intelligent species to meet and save. More fights to happen. More questions about how Bob is going to deal with being a being, whether he's going to become more computer or try to become more man. How does it work being both man and computer? Anyway, thanks for watching.